press the bell icon.
And never miss an update from the Daily Episode Network. Hello and welcome to the Daily Episode Network, and in this episode we'll be talking about the top 25 movies that are best for you and your partner to watch on a romantic date night. So what do we have first?
The first movie we have is The Girl Next Door. Ever fallen in love at first sight and 2 minutes later you accidentally see her changing clothes, and then 2 minutes later she shows up at your house, takes you for a drive and makes you strip in the middle of the road, and then drives away with your clothes and she turns out to be a porn star. But you still fall in love with her like nothing else matters as she changes your life.
So The Girl Next Door is actually a rom-com, and it deals with a nerd filled with monotony and an aspiring, fun-filled, dream that he's preparing for to become a politician. But as soon as she enters his life, he starts living it. She challenges his limits at every point of time, and they actually have fun together as he falls head over heels for her.
You know, this movie also tries to change the way sex education is being provided in schools, killing the boring ed films that makes the students sleep and transforming it into pornography based education that actually makes the students pay attention and can address the sex education problems.
That's actually pretty cool, and I think it will also give you some information apart from just being a romantic movie. So the next movie that we have is She's Out of My League. And having a crush on a girl you never expect to go out with is a classic. But what if she asks you out and you feel that you are not up to the mark? You love her, enjoy every second you spend with her, but you constantly try to find a flaw in her just so that you can realize why she is with you. But you can't find a flaw. What then?
She's Out of My League deals with a guy working airport security and accidentally meeting a woman who, in every aspect, is a 10. And destiny plays when she forgets her phone at security as the guy's boss can't stop checking her out and tantalizing her. The movie moves from no care about self esteem to extremely conscious and almost destroying a perfect love because of peer pressure, believing you are not good enough.
This movie addresses a lot of issues. It addresses premature ejaculation, homosexuality, intimate shaving, career aspirations, lying to parents about a career even if you are doing well, and most of all, which you never see, is if you can't work out with your ex-girlfriend, your parents might like her. And she starts hanging out with them, with her boyfriend, and with her new boyfriend at their house. So this movie is a fun-filled, romantic, and exciting ending, which shows a group of friends working at the airport security can really, mess with things and really change things according to them.
The next movie we have is Pride and Prejudice. The movie is a classic happily ever after story based on a novel by Jane Austen that opened the place for movies based on novels. Set in the 18th century, it shows the problems faced by parents to marry their daughters to rich families to set their life, and then comes in Keira Knightley as Elizabeth Bennet, who does not care for any of it until she falls in love with the richest of all.
So this movie is centered on Elizabeth Bennet, yes, and Mr. Darcy, played by Matthew McFadden, who is filled with attitude. He is portrayed as someone who has never heard no in his entire life. He becomes enticed with Miss Bennet, and he proposes to marry her, but he gets rejected and disappears until they reunite later at the end of the movie. And even though his aunt, the Lady Catherine de Bourgh, forbade her to marry Mr. Darcy, but she was different. It did not matter to her.
Written and portrayed in the 18th century, the movie does try to present an image where money doesn't matter, but instead it is always about the money. Mr. Darcy could not be said no to because he was super rich, and even after rejecting him once, Elizabeth says yes again. And since he was rich, nobody could question anything or anything about their union, not even Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
So, what next? The next movie we have is The Shape of Water. This beautifully crafted movie, successfully convincing everyone to love beyond any differences, is about the special bond between two bodies and souls that are really accepting of each other the way they are. It revolves around a mute lady, Elisa, who develops an emotional connection with a mermaid-like creature who has been brought to the research center.
The Shape of Water begins with narration asking helplessly, if I spoke about it, what would I tell you? About what happened to the princess without a voice. A real sense of unsettling and affectionate nostalgia and music from the golden age makes this film stand out from other creature love stories. In the end, Sea Monster takes Elisa away from the human world with him, which tells us love recognizes no barriers but wins at the end.
The next movie that we have is probably the most classic love stories of all time, the Shakespearean novel, the Shakespearean drama, Romeo and Juliet. And this romantic tragedy, Romeo and Juliet 1996, is a masterpiece managing to stay faithful to the original greatest play of all time, whilst exploding on the screen in a modern way of communicating in Shakespearean language. The classic love tale where age old vendetta between two powerful families, the Montagues and the Capulets, erupts into bloodshed.
The boy Romeo Montague falls in love with Juliet Capulet besides their family feuds. In a fight, Romeo unconsciously kills Juliet's cousin, for which the prince banishes Romeo. To reunite with Romeo, Juliet fakes her own death. Unaware of this fake act, Romeo kills himself in her tomb by taking poison. While Juliet awakens from her drugged coma and finds Romeo's corpse beside her, she kills herself with a gun. The deaths of children lead families to make peace in the end. That's how a tragic love story ends yet stays immortal.
So the next movie that we have is more musical than romantic, but it's still very romantic. It's La La Land, and if you're looking for a dreamy musical romance, then La La Land surely won't disappoint you. A modernized take on old school musical romantic sagas, but without a fairy tale like ending. So this movie has everything to make you fall in love with jazz and the way harsh realities have been portrayed. It is a story of two artists chasing their dreams who unfortunately had bad timing at key moments in their lives, and they decide between their career and love in those choices, ultimately ending on different paths.
If you're not a fan of jazz, then in starting you might get bored since the whole film has less dialogue and more of dance and music. But as the movie will proceed, it will make you stick to the screen. In the end, in a dream sequence, they show if the characters hadn't gone through bad times, what would their life be together? You think you may need some tissues, but actually, the ending will leave you with a smile on your face.
So, the next movie that we have is more sensual. It's 365 Days. 365 Days, originally known as 365 DNI, loaded with intense sex scenes, is perfect for your wild mood. This Polish Italian film follows Sicilian mafia family boss Massimo and his love, an ordinary woman named Laura, who gets kidnapped by Massimo later and then given 365 days to fall in love with him. He also ensures that he'll let her go if the feelings don't reciprocate, and in that given time she doesn't fall in love.
During the climax, she falls for him and tells she doesn't need 365 days anymore. However, the movie ends with a mystery for next two parts, demanding us to think what will happen next or if this is it. Even after being criticized with saying that it romanticized sexual assault, domestic violence and kidnapping, this movie became a mega hit. Although, according to me, it has a lot more than sex, it tells how a heartless mobster can also love someone so desperately.
That is actually true. Also, the next movie that we have is for the times that you need action, but it's supposed to be a romantic date night. It's Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Smith is a perfect movie for you if you want something that has action in it. It will deliver you enough dose of action, comedy, romance all together. Starring Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie as the Smiths, of course. A bonus to this movie is that their chemistry is just absolutely amazing and the movie is portrayed very well.
The story revolves around John and Jane Smith, who are a married couple, both living unexciting lives and attending marriage therapy sessions as their passion has cooled since they got married. Nevertheless, the pair stays unaware of the fact that they both are professional assassins working for rival agencies until both get assigned to kill the same person.
Well, husband and wife both being murder assassins, that probability is quite low, but not impossible. So, learning that they are both assassins and failing to eliminate their target, they are now assigned to kill one another. While making escalating attempts on each other's lives, John and Jane learn more about each other and then decide to fight together to preserve their marriage. They win in the end and go back to the marriage therapist and tell that they are very happy now.
The next movie we have is The Kissing Booth. The Kissing Booth is a teen romance drama based on the 2012 novel written by Beth Reekles, which follows childhood besties Elle Evans and Lee Flynn. One of the rules of their strong friendship is never to date one another's relatives, which Elle breaks when she ends up kissing Lee's elder brother Noah during their school's Kissing Booth fundraiser, which creates a rift in her friendship with Lee. The best part of this movie is it's fun to watch either you are with that special one or with your best friends.
So the second part of this teen rom-com further complicates the pair's relationship, when Elle must decide whether she wants to attend college with Lee, her best friend, or Noah, her boyfriend. There is also the third part of the movie, wrapping up with a 6-year time jump in which everyone is back in Los Angeles while Elle and Noah rekindle their romance. Despite mostly a happy ending, it left us all with more questions. And the questions were like, will Noah and Elle get back together?
The next movie we have is What Happens in Vegas. Joy Ellis McNally, a high strung stockbroker, gets dumped by her fiance at a surprise birthday party she prepared for him in front of all their friends in New York City, while Jack Fuller is fired from his job by his father. To overcome their sorrows, they move to Vegas for some time. After clearing up their misunderstanding, Joy and Jack get drunk and end up getting married. The next morning, they realize it was a mistake and decide to divorce. They wanted to get the marriage annulled, but they won the $3 million prize on a slot machine by accident.
Wow. And then they both wind up in court in New York for the money. But the judge, enraged by their slacker attitude towards marriage, tells them that they must live together for the next 6 months and attend marriage counseling. Jack and Joy engage in humorous battle of wits, aided by their two best pals.
Each one of them decides to make the life of the other hell on earth to force them to get out of the marriage. Jack proposes to her again and she accepts. Joy admits she resigned her job and has no idea what she is going to do as the two embrace. Jack informs her that the two of them have a lot of money. Joy says that they have hit the jackpot, to which Jack responds that he certainly did.
The next movie that we have is Bajirao Mastani. Bajirao Mastani is a beautiful historic love story between Peshwa Bajirao and Mastani. In the early 18th century, the court of the Maratha king Chhatrapati Sahu needed a new Peshwa, the equivalent of a modern day prime minister. Mastani, the daughter of a Hindu Rajput ruler Chhatrasal, and his Persian Muslim consort Rohani Bai reveals herself. Bajirao, impressed with her abilities as a warrior, lends his troops to her as she invades, and then she beats the invaders. Chhatrasal, thrilled on this, insists that Bajirao spent Holi in the Bundelkhand area with them.
When Mastani and Bajirao fall in love, he presents her his dagger, unaware that the Bundelkhand Rajputs use it as a symbol of marriage. Mastani arrives in Pune determined to follow her love, but is treated cruelly by Bajirao's mother. During a storm, Bajirao reminds her that he is already married and that if she is in a relationship with him, his court will never accept. Despite his warnings, she agrees and he declares Mastani his second wife.
Radhabhai imprisons Mastani after Bajirao leaves her battle. And in this raid, Bajirao defeats Nasir Jang's army on his own after receiving the news, but he collapses from his injuries. Kashibai writes a letter to Radhabai begging her to release Mastani so that Bajirao can recover. But Nana Sahib burns the letter. Bajirao dies from the trauma of his hallucinations while Mastani dies in captivity. After death, the ill-fated lovers are shown to be together.
The next movie we have is Ashiki 2. Ashiki 2 is a sensational musical love story. Rahul Jaker used to be a great singer, but now he is a drug addict with alcohol problems. He finds Arohi singing his song in a bar one night. He is blown away and promises to make her a star.
So Rahul's life is full of problems and he has completely lost interest in it. His heart skips a beat when he meets Arohi and he falls in love with her. Arohi, who loves Rahul more than her career, comforts him and falls in love with him too. Despite her mother's objections, Arohi moves in with Rahul and everything seems to be fine until Rahul's addiction escalates and he becomes very violent. Arohi seeks to rehabilitate him in order to help him overcome his alcoholism, risking her singing career in the process.
Rahul feels that he has become a burden in her life and the only way to help her is to leave her. The next day, he commits suicide. Arohi is distraught after Rahul's death and considers quitting her job, but his friend persuades her to stay.
So he reminds her that Rahul wanted her to be a successful singer and that he had given his life so that there would not be any burden on her. Later, in a fan's handbook, she signs her name as Arohi Rahul Jaikar as a tribute to Rahul and her unspoken wish to marry.
The next movie we have is Namaste London. Namaste London is a romantic story mixed with light-hearted comedy. Jasmeet is a beautiful London-born young woman who got educated in an English school and has many British friends. She gets herself transformed from Jasmeet to Jazz and has Western look. Her father thinks that it is impossible to get him an Indian son-in-law.
So basically, Manmohan takes his family on a tour to India and forces Jasmeet to marry Arjun Singh, who is a villager and does not know how to speak English. Arjun falls in love with her at first sight.
When they arrive in London, Jasmeet announces her engagement to Charlie Brown, a well-educated man with many contacts and connections. She refuses to acknowledge her marriage to Arjun because she was forced to marry Arjun. Arjun faces a lot of insults and racist remarks but is determined to win Jasmeet back. After that, Charlie Brown has a rugby match with the Indians and Arjun in which the English lose and Brown is openly racist towards the Indians.
Jazz realizes that her love for Arjun and she runs away from the wedding with Charlie Brown. She returns to India with Arjun and they are seen riding Arjun's motorcycle. While on the motorcycle, Arjun admits that he has always been able to communicate in English and he knew the language since the beginning. They all live happily ever after.
The next romantic movie we have is Ghost. Sam and Molly are a very happy couple and truly in love. One night, while walking back to their new apartment, they encounter a thief in a dark alley and Sam is murdered. He finds himself to be trapped as a ghost and realizes that his death was no accident.
So after dying, he's a ghost and he wants to find who the murderer was and what the actual plan was. Because while they thought that he died in a robbery, there was actually an ulterior motive and he just wanted to find that as a ghost. So he talked to a lot of people as a ghost and nobody would listen. He would walk through walls and at the end, he decided to follow the entire trail and actually found the cult.
Sam meets Oda May. Oda May is a con artist. Oda May is persuaded by Sam to convince Molly and warn her about future dangers. Meanwhile, Sam discovers that Carl was involved in some money laundering schemes and the attack on Sam was planned by his friend Carl to acquire some money out of him. Oda May tries to talk to Molly, but Molly is convinced by Carl that she is a fraud. Later on, Sam and Oda May try to get into Molly's apartment, but she refuses to let her in and breaks down in grief.
So later, Oda May is actually able to talk to her and Sam is able to convey her message and they end up defeating Carl and actually getting him arrested. So that's a very good ending to the movie.
The next movie we have is The Bounty Hunter. The Bounty Hunter is an action rom-com and this movie definitely entertains you. The plot follows Mike Boyd, a former detective with the New York Police Department who is now a bounty hunter. Nicole Hurley, his ex-wife, is an investigative reporter who was arrested for assaulting a cop.
Nicole misses her bond hearing and meets an informant after receiving a tip on a story about an apparent suicide that may have been a murder, forcing the judge to revoke her release and issue a warrant for her arrest. Nicole's informant Jimmy gets taken as she arrives.
Mike, or Milo, who is a bounty hunter, then gets a contract to find his ex-wife and brings her back to jail. Milo was also offered $5,000 for this job, which he happily accepted. This led to the major chaos that this movie is based on. Both Mike and Nicole escape an attack and with each other's help begin trying to solve the crime.
So they have an adventure of a lifetime as they drive golf carts in a lake, tear down bad guys and fall in love all over again. While doing that, the movie's interesting to watch and the brilliant acting from the star cast keeps you and always keeps you on your toes.
The next movie we have is everyone's favorite, Pretty Woman. starring Richard Gere and Julia Roberts, Pretty Woman was destined to be a blockbuster. The film's title, Pretty Woman, is based on the 1964 song Oh Pretty Woman by Roy Orbison.
This film was actually reimagined as a romantic comedy with a high budget after it was originally supposed to be a gloomy, cautionary tale about class and prostitution in Los Angeles. It was the third highest grossing film of the 1990 in terms of box office collections, and the film has sold the highest amount of ticket sales for a romantic comedy in the United States.
Edward Lewis, a high powered New York corporate raider, buys and dismantles struggling businesses, then sells the assets for a profit. He had an encounter with a prostitute in the red light area while driving home from a party. She consented to drive with him when he asked for directions to the Regent Beverly Wilshire Hotel.
He then agreed to pay her $3,000 and a new wardrobe if she would accompany him around town for the next 6 days. During those 6 days, Edward discovered the joy in little things and couldn't help but fall in love with the gorgeous lady. The movie ends on the perfect note and is all you would expect from a good feel good rom com.
The next movie we have is Notting Hill. Notting Hill is a 1999 romantic comedy film starring Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant. The story is of a romance between a London bookseller and a famous American actress who happens to walk into his shop. Released on 21st May 1999, Notting Hill was well received by critics and became the highest grossing British film of all time.
In Notting Hill, London, William Thacker owns a travel book business. Will is divorced and lives with Spike, who is a sloppy Welshman. Anna Scott, a well known Hollywood actress, walks into the shop one day and she purchases a book. Will collides with her shortly after as she left, spilling his juice all over her as he rounds the street corner. He then takes Anna across the street to his house, where she can change into a clean shirt. She kisses him on the cheek on her way out.
After this, the life of William Thacker gets more complicated by the day as he begins dating the world famous actress. He begins to feel like a nobody but is always a gentleman to Anna. William falls in love with her pretty soon and has to face a ton of hardships before he completely expresses his feelings.
However, things always go sideways and they never end up together. But near the end of the movie, he proposes to her at a press conference, to which she says yes and agreed to stay in Britain indefinitely.
The next romantic movie we have is Before Sunrise. Before Sunrise is a 1995 romantic drama film directed by Richard Linklater, starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. Jess and Celine meet aboard a Ural train and disembark in Vienna to spend the night together in the first chapter of the Before trilogy.
As the characters travel Vienna, the plot is deemed minimalistic, consisting largely of monologues and casual discussion with lengthy speech. Jesse, a romantic disguised as a cynic, and Celine, who appears to be a romantic, have opposing thoughts and viewpoints on life and love. Time and self discovery are also explored in Before Sunrise.
They have a kiss at the top of the Wiener Riesenrad at sunset after seeing a few sights in Vienna and begin to feel a romantic connection. As they continue to walk throughout the city, they become more open with one another, discussing themes such as love, life, religion, and their impressions on Vienna. The film finishes the next day at the train station when the couple agrees not to exchange contact information and instead reunite at the same location in 6 months, just as Celine's train is about to depart.
The next movie that we have is Devdas. Devdas is a 1955 Indian period drama film directed by Bimal Roy and based on the novel Devdas by Sharath Chandra Chattopadhyay. It was one of the best films ever made in the Indian cinema, starring Dilip Kumar, Suchitra Sen, and Vaijayanti Mala.
Devdas is a young man from a minor zamindar Bengali family in India in the early 1900s, set against the backdrop of rural Bengal during feudal times. Paro, alias Parvati, is a young Bengali Brahmin woman from a middle class Bengali Brahmin family with a little lower prosperity and status. Devdas and Paro had been childhood sweethearts, but their families forbade them from marrying. Devdas hesitated to move on because Paro was married to an older man. Chunni Babu, Devdas' carousing buddy in Calcutta, introduces him to Chandramukhi, a courtesan. At Chandramukhi's, Devdas begins to drink heavily, but the courtesan falls in love with him and looks after him. His health deteriorates as a result of a mixture of binge drinking and dissatisfaction with life, a delayed type of suicide.
Devdas comes to meet Paro, sensing his impending death, to fulfill a pledge he made to see her before he died. On a dark Friday night, he dies at her doorstep. When Paro learns of Devdas's death, she rushes to the door, disregarding Parda. But her family members prevent her from leaving.
The next movie we have is Twilight Saga. What happens when a vampire and an ordinary girl fall for each other? If you want to know, then you should check out Twilight. Isabella Swan moves to Gloomy Forks to live with her father. As she begins her junior year of high school, she gets attracted to Edward Cullen, a man with a terrible secret. Edward is a vampire. Edward and Bella have passionately and unconditionally fallen in love with each other. As a result, their forbidden relationship as a human and a vampire begins. However, the young lovers soon learn that their problems are only beginning.
For Bella's 18th birthday, the Cullens plan to throw her a private party. Things go wrong and the Cullen family decides to leave Forks, Washington. Bella withdraws from all social activities at first until she realizes she can coexist with Jacob Black, a childhood friend. Jacob is going through something he can't express to Bella, and their bond begins to disintegrate.
Bella is forced to choose in between her true love for Edward and her friendship with Jacob Black, knowing that her action is capable of reigniting the vampire werewolf conflict. Bella and Edward are finally getting married. Bella makes it through her honeymoon, but she faces a new challenge when she learns she's pregnant and the baby is developing at an alarming rate. The wolves turn on Bella and Edward as a result of the pregnancy, but Jacob swears to protect his friend.
After her transformation into a vampire, her senses have been amplified. Renesmee's growth is accelerated while Bella adjusts to her new state of being. The Volturi proclaim the baby to be an abomination and sentence the Cullens to death when they hear of her existence. To safeguard their family, Bella, Edward, and the rest of the clan seek support from allies around the world.
The next movie we have is all-time favorite romantic movie, Titanic. Titanic is a 1997 American romantic drama film based on the sinking of the RMS Titanic. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet as members of various social classes who fall in love aboard the ship during its tragic maiden voyage.
Titanic was nominated for 14 Academy Awards when it was released in December 1997. So, Titanic was the first picture to break a $1 billion mark worldwide, gross of nearly 1.84 billion. Titanic was one of the most famous romantic films and is a true emblem of everlasting love.
Winning 2 seats on the luxury ship was the nicest thing that ever happened to Jack, a homeless artist. He knew what his fate was even before he learnt of the Titanic's catastrophe. He met Rose. Rose was a troubled young woman living in a wealthy society, betrothed to a millionaire her mother had chosen for her.
The love affair between Jack and Rose would be cut short. Nighttime was a perilous time for ships at that time, as they had to actively search for water for impediments. The Titanic's crew missed an iceberg and hit it, shredding the side of the hull into shreds. The conclusion brings up a wide range of feelings and causes your heart to warm somewhat.
The next movie we have is The Notebook. The Notebook is a romantic drama film from the United States that was released in 2004. Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams star as a young couple in the 1940s who fall in love. Nicholas Sparks' novel of the same name was published in 1996 and the film is based on it.
The Notebook alternates between two seasons in their lives of the same couple. We see them as young lovers and as old people, with her fading into darkness of Alzheimer's and him remaining faithful in his love. Every day he reads to her from a notebook in which he chronicles how they met, fell in love, and overcame hurdles to their happiness.
The Notebook is a sentimental fantasy, but such fantasies aren't bad. We tell ourselves stories all the time to help us cope with life. It may not be a standard happy go lucky romance film, but it definitely makes you feel something.
This is a contemporary love story set in the years leading up to and following World War II. Ali and Noah had a beautiful summer together, but her family and the socio-economic realities of the period kept them apart. Noah tried to stay in touch with Ali after they had forced to part ways, but his letters go unanswered. Noah eventually writes a final letter in which he expresses his undying and unending love.
The next movie we have is our all time favorite Bollywood romantic movie, Veer Zara. Veer Zara is a Hindi language period epic romance drama film released in 2004. Shah Rukh Khan and Preeti Zinta play the titular star-crossed lovers in the film. Zara Hayat Khan is the daughter of a Pakistani politician and Veer Pratap Singh is an Indian Air Force officer. Veer is imprisoned on spurious allegations and his case is being fought by a young Pakistani lawyer named Samya Siddiqui.
Basically, Zara, who was betrothed, dashes into Veer's arms, making her father fall sick. Zara's father, Jahangir, has a high profile reputation which would be tarnished if she ran away with an Indian. Veer complies with Zara's request and departs back to India, but her fiance, engaged by Zara's humiliation, has him wrongfully imprisoned under the name Rajesh Rathod on the grounds of being an Indian spy.
As a gesture of goodwill, the Pakistani government decided to investigate unsolved cases involving Indian detainees in 2004. Prisoner 786 defense is Samya Siddiqui's maiden case as a fledgling Pakistani lawyer. For the past 22 years, the prisoner has not talked to anyone. Veer Pratap Singh, after being addressed by his name, opens up to Samya and tells her his sad story.
The next movie that we have is Rockstar. Imtiaz Ali wrote and directed Rockstar, a 2011 Hindi language musical romantic drama film. A.R. Rahman composed the music of the film, which stars Ranbir Kapoor and Nargis Fakhri. This film's music stayed with everyone for a long time.
Jordan is a Jat lad from Delhi with the real name Janardhan Jakhar, also known as JJ. He is a Hindu college student who aspires to be a rock star like Jim Morrison, an ambition that his peers mock. JJ jokes that he needs a heartbreak in order to gain that superstar status. He won't be able to achieve his idol status because hasn't happened yet. During a dance competition, he sees Heer Kaul, a lovely girl from St. Stephen's College, perform and overhears that she is the perfect heartbreaking machine. However, Heer marries a man named Jay in Kashmir and the couple then relocates to Prague.
She develops feeling for JJ during the time and she gives him the moniker Jordan. He then seeks safety as the neighboring Nizamuddin Dargah, where he sings qawwalis for 2 months. JJ's singing at the Dargah is heard by Ustad Jamil Khan, a well-known musician who convinces Dhingra, the proprietor of Platinum Records, to sign him. JJ is interviewed by Sheena, a journalist who informs him that Dhingra is sending performers to Prague for a European tour. In hopes of reuniting with Heer, JJ offers to work there.
The film returns to the Verona concert where Jordan gets a vision of a smiling Heer approaching him while performing. Heer has perished in a coma and the naive falcon has returned home according to the finale. The film concludes with a phrase from Rumi's poem which translates to there is a realm beyond all ideas of wrongdoing and right doing. I'll be waiting for you there.
The last movie that we have in this list is Call Me By Your Name. Call me by your name and I'll call you by mine. This coming of age romantic drama is purely full of love and just love. It's both beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. From cinematographic eye to ear soothing music, Call Me By Your Name is entirely a beautiful piece of art. I won't recommend this movie to just homosexuals but to everyone. It's a tale of first love in the middle of warm, sunny skies, gentle breezes, and charming trees, with a young man, Elio, falls in love with a handsome graduate boy, Oliver, who comes to stay with the family in northern Italy in the summer of 1983.
Even after being totally opposite personalities, they develop feelings for each other while hanging out. They share a beautiful physical and emotional bond. At the end of the summer, Oliver leaves since he had to, which breaks their hearts.
After almost 3 years, Oliver calls Elio and tells that he got engaged with a woman, which leaves Elio broken. So he sits staring into a fire, feeling his pain and not turning away from it. The scene will make you stare blankly at the screen with a lump in your throat and a tightness in your chest, or perhaps you need tissues. It tells you that you should feel and accept every emotion, and most importantly, let that come out, and even if it's pain, because pain is such a beautiful emotion of life. So if you like this video, leave a comment on it, like it.
And share it among your friends and subscribe the channel.
Thank you.